Good morning. I'm Jeff Davis, Executive Director of the MSU Alumni Association. It's my pleasure to welcome you to Bulldog Bites, our virtual speaker series featuring Mississippi State faculty, staff, researchers, and alumni. Today's installment of Bulldog Bites is Creating a Culture of Inclusion. Our featured speaker this morning is Rashida Bodie-Forbes, MSU Vice President for Access, Diversity, and Inclusion. Rashida is a two-time graduate of Mississippi State, earning a bachelor's degree in biological sciences and a master's degree in public policy and administration, and is originally from Meridian, Mississippi. With over 12 years in higher education, Rashida has a long-standing commitment to fostering a diverse and inclusive campus community. In her role, she provides individual mentorship to underrepresented students seeking personal, social, and intellectual support, and identifies campus climate trends that assist in developing strategies that proactively promote inclusive excellence. As a member of the MSU Presidential Cabinet, she works with university leadership to provide advice, develop and implement university-wide initiatives, and oversees operation of the university units which administer programs that broaden college access, support student success, and enhance diversity-related teaching and learning across the university. Rashida is involved in a number of national organizations, including the National Association of Diversity Officers in Higher Education, the National Association of Student Affairs Professionals, and the Southern Association for College Student Affairs, among others. Our moderator joining Rashida this morning is Roger Davis Jr. Roger serves as a graduate service assistant in the Office of Institutional Diversity and Inclusion. Roger earned a Bachelor of Science from MSU in biochemistry with a minor in leadership studies. A reminder to our viewing audience, we encourage you to utilize the Q&A feature via WebEx or the comment section via Facebook Live to submit your questions. Good morning, Rashida and Roger, and welcome to Bulldog Bites.
Good morning. We are really excited to be with you all today and excited to talk a little bit about how we create a culture of inclusion here at Mississippi State. Really excited that Roger can join and do this interview style where we have the opportunity to talk a little bit about ways in which we're creating a culture of inclusion here. And then we really welcome any questions that you might have about ways in which we're doing the work here at Mississippi State. So Roger, I'll turn it over to you.
All righty. Good morning, everyone. I'm super excited to be a part of this with you as well, Ms. Rashida. We have a few guided questions that we'll start with. And like she said, if you have any questions, just drop those in the chat and we'll get to those. So I'll start out by asking you to share what diversity, equity, and inclusion means to you and why are they so important?
Yeah, no, I think that is an excellent question. So when I think about diversity, in the simplest of forms, I think diversity is really the differences that exist amongst the different people. So, I mean, diversity could be gender, race and ethnicity, sexual orientation, religious preferences, political affiliations. And so it's really the identities that we hold. Those identities can be seen or it could be unseen. So oftentimes when we think about diversity, we don't think about, people's ability or a disability or a person's socioeconomic status. And so all of these things kind of make up who people are. And so when I think about diversity in the simplest of forms, that's what comes to mind. When we think about the word inclusion, inclusion is how people feel in a particular space. So do I feel welcome? Does this space belong to me? And when we think about equity, equity is about not doing the same thing for everyone. And so oftentimes it's kind of hard to think about what that looks like. So I probably could provide an example of the differences between diversity, equity, and inclusion. And it's often centered around programs and events because the Holmes Cultural Diversity Center, the Office of Institutional Diversity and Inclusion, Center for Student Activities, Student Affairs, we always do programs and events on campus. And so when we think about diversity, inclusion, and equity, it would be like ordering T-shirts and ordering a size small for everyone that's going to attend the event. Now, we know that everyone that's attending the event does not wear a size small. In fact, I would really like to see myself fit into a small shirt. But that's what equity would say, is that, we're going to give everybody the same thing because everybody is on the same playing field. But we know that's not true. And so then when we think about equity and when we think about inclusion and we think about the diversity of the people that's represented, then it means that we have to make sure that we're creating processes and procedures in a way that makes everyone fit, that is accommodating to the people that's going to be participating. So I would say that's what the difference is between diversity, equity, and inclusion. And I think more now than ever, in a time when we are understanding that we are a multi-generational institution. And when we think about the fact that we have non-traditional students coming back to campus, or we thinking about the fact that everybody doesn't believe the same things or think the same way, or are coming in with totally different experiences, then we have an obligation to make sure that we're creating a place of inclusion that's based on equity.
Thank you so much for sharing that. So what would you say your perspective or approach of understanding the perspectives of colleagues from different backgrounds?
Oh, I think that's a really good question. So the first thing that I would say is that we can't connect and critique at the exact same time. So what do I mean by that? Oftentimes when we're entering into conversations with people and trying to understand their perspectives, I'll use I statements. Oftentimes when I enter into conversations and I'm trying to understand different people's perspectives, particularly if they differ from my own experiences or my own thoughts, then I often enter the conversations critiquing their perspective based upon my experiences. So I say, oh, like that can't be impossible because I didn't feel like this, or I don't understand X, Y, and Z because of this. And so what happens is that when I'm critiquing everything that someone is saying, I'm not connecting with them at the exact same time. So then that changes my approach to the way I try to understand people's perspectives. I now enter into the conversations really wanting to sit back and listen and understand their perspectives and where they're coming from in order to connect with them, even if it's not my lived experience, because it doesn't have to be my lived experience in order to be a supporter or a friend or an ally. So I think that's really important as we think about the different backgrounds of the people that we're working with or the people that we're connecting with. And then I think the other place too is that I recognize that everyone is not willing to always share their perspectives, because that also requires vulnerability. And so to be vulnerable about different things may be hard for people. And so then I also have to think about ways in which I educate myself in order to understand other people's perspectives. So that means then, how do I engage in programs or events or trainings or workshops that helps me understand people's perspectives, and to also understand that it's just their perspective. It doesn't have to be the perspective of everyone who might identify the way that they identify. And that's particularly how I try to approach that work.
Great. So yeah, you definitely brought out some great points about our understanding the perspectives of others here on campus and in the community. So in your new role, how would you hope to advocate for access, diversity, equity, and inclusion here on campus?
So I think that one of the ways in which we do that, particularly advocating for access, diversity, equity, inclusion, is inviting people into the conversations. I think that is the most important thing that we could do in terms of advocating, is that I can't speak on experiences that I've never had, or I can't speak on experiences for someone else. And so then how do I invite people to be a part of the work that takes place around access, diversity, inclusion, equity, justice here on campus? And then not only inviting people to be a part of the conversation, then I think it means that we take critical looks at our processes and our programs, our policies here at the institution. I was in a meeting earlier this week where I was reminded about examining why we do some of the things that it is that we do. And I was reminded of this because of a conversation that I was having with one of my colleagues where in the wake of like COVID and fundraising, it's like, well, how do I get more money from our student organizations? And the thought is for many of our organizations, well, let's just increase our membership fees for our organization. So instead of charging $10 for our membership fee, let's charge $20 for our membership fees. But is that really a fair process? When we think about access and we think about people losing their jobs, or we think about the financial crisis, could it be that increasing our membership fees impact a demographics of students that want to be involved in our student organizations but can't? And so it requires us being able to take a critical look at our approaches and take a critical look at our work, particularly through an equity lens. And so that's one of the things that I'm hoping that we can continue to enhance here, working alongside different departments and different student organizations and different people who are really wanting to engage in this work. I also think that when we think about, the demographics of students here at our university, that almost 40% of our students are first generation college students, and almost 40% of our students come from low socioeconomic status, which is based upon their Pell eligibility, then we have a responsibility around access. We have a responsibility around equity, and I'm really excited that we are continuing to enhance the work that we're doing around this area, and that there's a whole division created for it.
All right, thank you. So I know that you have many years of experience in higher education, specifically multicultural affairs. What would you say is the most difficult part of implementing a diversity and inclusion program or initiative on campus or in the community?
So what is the most difficult part? I would probably say the most difficult part to, implementing diversity and inclusion related work is understanding that everyone is entering the space with different understanding and different attitudes and different experiences. And so what may work for someone may not work for someone else because people are not monolithic. And so then it has to be an individualized approach to the work. And so, like, for example, when I think about myself, so I have 3 boys, my husband, and my dog Cooper, who's a boy dog in my house. I'm the only woman in the house. I could go down a whole rabbit trail about that, but I guess I'll save that for later. You can talk to me off the record about those experiences. But no, the interesting part about that though is that because I'm in a house with all men or all boys, navigating spaces that are mostly men isn't really hard for me because I do it every day at my house. And so then what might be needed for someone else who navigates spaces where all men, it looks different for me. And I can't say, because it's not hard for me to navigate that space, that, oh, this should be easy just because it's easy for me. Because my experiences of being in a house with all men is what makes it easy for me. So now then, that means that the work that we do around diversity and inclusion has to be customized based upon a person. And that could be time consuming. That can be expensive in some ways, expensive, in terms of resources, expensive in terms of time, expenses in terms of human capital to do the work. But I think it's necessary when we think about the fact that, and the fact that we know that everyone belongs here at Mississippi State University, and we are focused on creating a culture of inclusion that lets everyone know that they have a people, they have a place, and they have a space here on campus.
Thank you. So I have one more question, and then we're going to move to the questions from our audience, okay?
Sure.
So what is the most rewarding part of your job as Vice President of Access, Diversity, and Inclusion here at MSU?
So I think that the most rewarding part of my job often comes on commencement day, where we have the opportunity to see students walk across stage. And I think that is the beauty of the work that we do here at the institution. Our Vice President of Student Affairs, Dr. Regina Hyatt, says it all the time, and I think it holds true for the work that we do, that the most important thing that we can do here at Mississippi State University is help students get degrees. And so when we see students walk across stage, that means that every meeting we've had to have, every event that we've attended, every program that we've put on, every student organization that is created is for this particular purpose right here, and that is to help students get degrees, because we know that degrees help with social mobility, that degrees help the economy. And so I think that that is the most beautiful part of the work. And the truth is, it's the thing that I hold on to every single day when I say, like, can I continue the work? And the answer is yes, because our job is to help students get degrees.
Yes, and I definitely remember my commencement walking across the stage and seeing all of the individuals across campus who had an impact on me and how that made me feel. So I definitely understand how you felt as an administrator to see your students walk across the stage. So we have a question.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
I'm sorry. So we have a question from Taylor. She said, when building a culture of diversity and inclusion, what advice would you give leadership in different organizations?
So when we think about what it looks like to create a culture of inclusion, I think that one of the things that we have to remember is that the onus is on the individual who might, so let me make this point. This might be the easiest way to describe, like, how do we create a culture of inclusion? So oftentimes we hear this analogy that's given around creating a culture of inclusion, that diversity is asking someone to the dance. So it's representative of the individuals that are there. And inclusion is inviting the person actually to dance. But the inviting people to dance is really not the place of inclusion. The place of inclusion is, how do we let people control the music? And so then that means then we have to hear and listen to the feedback of the individuals that's represented in the organization and things that they need in order to be supported. So I think it begins with asking the right questions. I think it begins with hearing people's perspectives, even if it's different from our own perspectives. And I think that it also begins with developing authentic relationships that's centered on hearing people's stories as well.
Awesome. So what are your top priorities in your new role?
So I think in my new role, there are two big priorities that I have, and it's really centered around the charge that President Keenum has given me. And those priorities are, number one, let's help students get degrees. When we look at the national degree, when we look at the national data around degree completion for underrepresented students, particularly Black students, or first generation college students, or students from low income areas, we recognize that institutions of higher education as a whole have a responsibility to support students. And so the goal in doing that is not to just focus on students being college ready, but the goal is now also us as institutions of higher education being focused on being student ready. And so again, that goes back to looking at the programs and the initiatives that we have in place. Are they student ready, and are they individualized based upon the student? And that's going to take time. So I'm entering this place in this space wanting to listen and understand the work that's taking place, want to understand what students might need in order to be successful, and begin to start building out programs around that. And then the other priority is really diversifying our underrepresented faculty here at the university, and also staff, because we know that for oftentimes for underrepresented students that there is a greater sense of belonging when they can connect with someone who looks like them. And so begin to build out pipeline programs and recruiting processes and hiring processes that will diversify our faculty and staff here at the university, I think is a priority and is extremely important.
Thank you. So what are some of the newest campus initiatives being put into play by your department with respect to diversity, inclusion, and equity? That is a question from Michael.
Yeah, so a lot of what we are doing right now honestly already exists, but the problem is that we have to have a coordinated approach to the work. So now when we think about the works around diversity, inclusion, and equity, they can't happen in their silos. So now the goal is really to provide a coordinated approach to doing the work around that. Is creating an infrastructure to where we know that it's not just the diversity and inclusion's office to do diversity and inclusion related work. And so then how do we build capacity around that? How do we have conversations around that? How do we have trainings around that? One of the things that I have really found in terms of talking to other departments and other colleagues around campus is that people have a vested interest in doing the work. They just don't know where to start. And so this really creates an opportunity for some intersectional work to happen around diversity and inclusion. Really, when I think about the work, again, it has to be, our processes, it has to be our programs, it has to be our initiatives, it has to be a multifaceted approach to the work.
Awesome. And to add to that, Robert wants to know, how can Black alumni get involved in those programs and initiatives on campus?
Yeah, so I think that alumni are really one of the most valuable pieces to being able to connect with students. Oftentimes, one of the things that we know around underrepresented students in particular is like underrepresented students may not finish college because they might be first generation and haven't connected someone who's done the very thing that they want to do, or is having a hard time with mentorship and is just looking for someone to connect with. And oftentimes we think that mentorship has to come from like faculty and staff that are on campus. But the truth is that alumni are some of the greatest mentors that we can have. I use like my own personal background to think about like the value of alumni, especially when it comes to mentorship. And so when I was a student here, we're not going to talk about how long ago at Mississippi State. One of the things that I often tell people is that I did not want to come to Mississippi State University, not because I had anything against Mississippi State, but I really didn't know a whole lot about Mississippi State University, and I had in my head where I should go. And so my parents said, well, the deal is if you come to the university and you hate it, we'll allow you to transfer off. And so I said, okay, let's hate it so I can transfer off. And I thought that was going to be a win-win. But one of the things that was most beneficial to me was that our faculty, staff, students, and alumni played a major role in my success here. One of the individuals that I that I had the opportunity to connect with and that I was the closest with was about to get ready to graduate from the university. But even when she graduated from the university, her connection with me didn't end. So I remember her, being in Germany and calling and checking on me or telling me that I can do this and telling me that I can finish. And that was really, really important to my success here in college. And she ended up being a bridesmaid in my wedding. We are still super, super close to this day. But as she could have said, well, I've graduated from Mississippi State, and so it's not my responsibility anymore, but she didn't. She stayed engaged. And so, again, working closely with our Black alumni on the work that's taking place around diversity and inclusion and access.
All right, thank you. So what does it mean for MSU to have a commitment to diversity, and how have we demonstrated that commitment?
Oh, I think that's a excellent question. I think that that there are many ways in which Mississippi State has demonstrated the commitment. Number one, I think that the role of a vice president of access, diversity, and inclusion is absolutely one way that the university demonstrates the commitment to diversity, inclusion, and access. One of the things that I particularly admire about this role is that the work, oftentimes when we think about diversity and inclusion, we really think about just race. Or let me say, I might have previously only thought about race, but when we talk about access, this really opens up us as an institution to think about, like, what does access really mean? And I think that's particularly important as with us being a land grant institution. And so the university is really demonstrating that we are engaging in the work and we're wanting to elevate the work here at the institution. And I think that's particularly important around that. We've seen funding within our office increase each year to really plan programs, events, initiatives that support the work of diversity and inclusion in education, because people don't know what we don't teach. And so then that means then there has to be training, there has to be workshops. Through our Office of Institutional Diversity and Inclusion, we have the opportunity to work with different departments on campus, like getting to work with the Center for Teaching and Learning around inclusive pedagogy. Like, that's particularly important because now we have the opportunity to embed the work into the curriculum, which we're absolutely doing. And so having a coordinated approach to this, I think, is one way that the university is demonstrating that. And then providing the financial resources in order to do it has been something that has been particularly important.
Awesome. So now that you have your new role as VP, what is a typical day like for you? And what will it look like from day to day in this new role?
So that is a really good question. I don't know if there's ever a such thing as a typical day, but no. So I think it's me entering the work, particularly as a new vice president, with listening. So listening to our students, our undergraduate students, our graduate students, our faculty, our staff, our alumni, about what does diversity and inclusion, equity, access look like for them? What does it feel like to them? How do they experience it? How do we make it the reality even more here at the university? And so that's going to require a lot of listening. That's going to require a lot of conversation. Honestly, that's going to require a lot of innovation. And so, it can't be that we rely on doing things that we've always done because it's easy or because, like, I feel like it works. But it's going to be also critically examining the work that we have done and say, does it really work? And is it working the way that we want it to work? Because what I might have done 4 years ago for the students 4 years ago can't be for the students that I do, the work that I do for the students today. And so it's really going to be going in and taking a hard look at that and making some adjustments for that. But one of the things that I'm most appreciative of is when I talk to my colleagues or when I talk to my students or when we as team members talk about the work, there's an excitement about doing the work, and people are wanting to be engaged in the work. And so I'm really excited about what that looks like.
Thank you. So from Facebook, I know that we're in the wake of COVID-19. What are some of the challenges in reaching equity and inclusion during this time of social distancing and more online learning?
Yeah, so I think what we know about the challenges, particularly in the wake of COVID, is that everyone doesn't have the same access to technology or to resources that allows them to be successful in the same ways. And so I think again, because we know this, we have to take a multifaceted approach to ensuring that students are successful here, that that is going to require again something different and individualized by each student. And so we as an institution have invested money into providing the resources that students may need to get a hotspot from the library, for example, or get laptops that they may need. And so continuing to provide the resources and the infrastructure for technology is particularly important around that. And then listening to students and what they feel like they need in order to be successful. One of the things that I also appreciate about what President Keenum said around this work is that in the age of COVID, also we have to enter this with a lot of grace. And so when students are saying that they have a hard time, our first reaction has to be to believe the students and not assume that, students aren't just not wanting to do the work because they're being lazy, but there might be some other barriers that create some burdens around that. And so our COVID task force has been really responsive to that and really communicative around the process. And I think that's particularly important.
All right. And then we'll have one more question, and that is, how has roundtables, panels, and courses improved conversations about diversity, inclusion, and access?
So we've done a series of roundtables. We've done roundtables around allyship. We've done roundtables around racial trauma. We've done roundtables about just talk to us about how you're feeling about diversity, inclusion, and access. And so it's looked differently for different people. One of the things that I think is particularly important around how the work has been done is because oftentimes people are really afraid to have conversations around diversity and inclusion and equity. And because we're living in a society where saying the wrong thing or asking the wrong questions is viewed as being, bad or harmful or hurtful. And we do certainly know that there's intent and there's impact. But one of our focuses is creating a culture where people ask questions in order to understand so that the work can happen. The goal is to really build up allies to help do the work around diversity and inclusion and equity. And so we've seen more people, more now than ever, engaging in conversations, which is really positive, because that minimally lets us know that people want to come to the table and ask questions. And we begin there. We begin with, getting people to come to the table and having those conversations. And so it's been really powerful. We've formed some great allyships, not only here at the university, but also in the community. So we've seen our community leaders want to partner with Mississippi State University in order to continue to have the conversations, because the conversations are the beginning point. They're not the end point. And so having those conversations ultimately gives us the information that we need to do the work. And so that is one of the benefits that we've had around having the roundtables, having the panels, having the trainings and the workshops as well.
All right. Thank you, Ms. Rashida, and thank you so much for sharing about creating a culture of inclusion here at MSU through your new role as Vice President of Access, Diversity, and Inclusion. Now I'll ask if you wanted to add anything before I turn it back over to Jeff.
No, I just want to thank the Alumni Association for allowing me to be a part of that and welcome anyone who wants to be involved in the work around diversity and inclusion and access here at Mississippi State University. Please don't hesitate to reach out because we welcome the opportunity to partner with people around the work because that's how inclusion happens. So thank you all so much for allowing me to participate.
And thanks so much, Rashida and Roger, for your time this morning and sharing all the great things that MSU is doing to become a more inclusive community for all of our constituents. We appreciate your leadership, and we also appreciate our audience for tuning into this edition of Bulldog Bites. For more information on how alumni, students, and friends can be involved with the efforts that Rashida and her team we'll have links on the Bulldog Bites website linking to her division and other initiatives, how alums can get involved. So we appreciate everybody's time and look forward to catching you next time on Bulldog Bites. Have a great day and hail state.